Welcome to DC Local Leaders, the podcast where we talk to C-suite leaders within the DC area. Our guests share their pathways to success and the important moments that impacted their careers. Lean in as we get the inside scoop on how they are shaping their industries, how they lead, manage, and connect with others. From the sectors of aerospace, defense, tech, IT, and more, this is Local Leaders. Your host has been making meaningful connections with industry leaders for over 15 years. Here's Philip Nathram.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We're back with another episode of DC Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Nathram. Today, we are speaking with another fantastic leader in our local area. We're speaking with the CEO of Riva Solutions, Naveen Krishnamurthy. Naveen shares with us his journey of how he sought out the advice of 30 people that have already done what he wanted to do before he even started. He, along with the leadership of his company, his mentors, his advisors, have grown that company from just one contract to doing over $20 million in revenue. He talks to us in depth about how he goes through his process of mentorship, fostering creativity, and what he does in his own practice to make his day a success, to make his company successful. So really excited to get into that. Thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed, rated, and reviewed, followed us, Apple, Spotify, LinkedIn, Instagram. We really appreciate it, and let's get into the episode. And we're on. Well, welcome to episode 2 of the DC Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Nathram. I'm here today with Naveen Krishnamurthy, CEO of Riva Solutions. We are in his office here in Tyson's Corner. And it's great to have you. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks, Phil. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and have this chat with you today.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a couple times over the years. You know, I've been really excited about watching you and just hearing you talk about all your experiences. And I think it's a powerful message. You've done a number of different things, continued to learn things along the way. And I think that's a big part of what this podcast is all about, right? It's learning from your experiences. And I hope some of the people that it may help would be other leaders, other CEOs, other people that are maybe in more of a technical position and want to make the jump to leadership, or just someone fresh out of school, right? Doesn't really know what they're doing or mid-career kind of stalling, but then they hear you say something and they think to themselves, well, you know what? Maybe I could do something like that too.
Sure. No, excited to talk about that. No pressure, of course.
Yeah.
Now that you set it up that way.
I know. I just put a big weight on your shoulder. Like, you better say something valuable. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to be that way. So tell me a little bit about Riva Solutions. What is Riva Solutions? What do you guys do?
It's a government contractor, primarily services side. In terms of our core capabilities, digital, emerging tech, I'm really excited about like the RPA component of our emerging tech division. Cloud, DevSecOps. We made an acquisition a few years ago of a company called SM Resource Corporation. So that helped us build a science and engineering division. And then digital, we've just been doing for 10 plus years. It's kind of in our DNA and core. And then a lot around management consulting, traditional PMO, et cetera. So we have 8 core capabilities. We just kind of went through that repositioning this past year. And right now, from a government contracting perspective, we qualify as a larger small business in those service areas. We're 430 plus employees in 16 states, 22 states and 16 agencies. So very diversified. I kind of equate it to, the cliche around crawl, walk, run. We're kind of entering the run stage before that window closes as we head into the mid-tier market. Yeah. So we're starting to kind of do that preparation while we still take advantage of being a larger small business.
When you started off, did you start off just by yourself, or was it you and another partner?
I started off by myself. I was a minority owner of another GovCon company, had the opportunity, I kind of joke with people, learn on someone else's dime.
Yeah.
And, for me, it wasn't learning about acquisition or IT capital planning, which was my background. It was applying basics around my MBA around, oh my God, I got to figure out payroll and HR, and I got to figure out how to establish a line of credit with the bank and figure out how to follow proposal processes. So I got to do that with my old company. And then I used that to exit, to really bootstrap and start Riva out of the gate. And honestly, a lot of people ask me this question. I took one of the contracts with me in terms of making that exit, and I knew that would give me at least a 2-year runway to try to figure out if I can make it or break it, in terms of starting Riva.
Yeah, you mentioned MBA. So you went to Maryland. Did you go to Maryland for undergrad and graduate?
I did. I did a triple major at Maryland. I tell everybody it looks impressive on my wall. I just say I cut and pasted the diploma 3 times.
Three at one time?
Yeah, no, I was 5.5 years, so it might be also partially that I just wanted to stay in college.
When did you sleep? Oh, so you were having too much fun. You're like, I got to find another major otherwise.
Exactly. And then I went back to the Smith School. Highly recommend it. University of Maryland, part-time evening. And, honestly, a lot of the classes I started seeing some of the same professors I had when I was in my undergrad. But it was great doing that between 28 and 30 because I was able to apply, actual practical experience to doing the MBA.
Yeah.
Right when I was starting work at the previous company, which was a startup GovCon company.
Was it 5 years total? What'd you do in between that time? Did you work or did you find something else? You were age 28 when you started your graduate level degree?
Yeah, I did it part-time. So I was working, right at that juncture, I started working at my previous company. And so I was there 5 years, K4 Solutions.
Yeah.
And then exited and started Riva 10.5 years ago.
Okay. And
I feel, Phil, you're backing me into my age now.
No, that's not what I'm trying to do. I wasn't trying to count down like, all right, well, 29 minus. No, that's not what I was trying to do.
I'm still 38 if anyone asks.
No, I was just trying to get an idea if you thought, and it sounds like you do, that for, let's say someone's listening today and they're graduating college and they're thinking, should I just go straight into the MBA? Should I just get a master's? Is that going to set me apart in the job market in the beginning? And is that something I should do versus let me get out there and see if I even know how to apply what I've learned or learn something, and then maybe it takes me in a different direction?
That's a really good question, and we get a lot of that, in working through career development with folks here at Riva, and I kind of relay my own personal experience. I can't speak to how master's and graduate programs have changed in the last couple decades, but I really feel that you've got to have a little bit of a distance between getting in the working world, getting some practical experience before you start your graduate level programs. At that time I did my GMAT early on Booz Allen's dime. And so, leveraging your company programs to kind of help with prep and getting through some of those things, looking at tuition reimbursement. So it's kind of like, let's take advantage of the benefits. But I found myself at 28 to 30 where I would see people in our programs that were maybe 25, 26 going, I don't even understand how this would apply to my daily life, because so much of it is akin to being a manager or a leader. And a lot of people haven't done that yet.
There's a lot of people, I guess I asked that question to a lot of people, right? And I think more people have said what you said, get some experience under your belt and then use that as an opportunity to go back to grad school with a little bit more purpose.
We kind of call it resume padding. I got to get my graduate degree. I got to get my PMP. I got to get my Lean Six Sigma. I got to have a high level of clearance. Like I have to have a large business on my resume. And I think a lot of people in their 20s do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I also think that, we're getting, employers who are becoming more smarter on how they do talent acquisition, what they look for, and that cohesiveness around performance and skill sets, I think, is starting to shift in our market. Not just that you have the relevant certifications and the pedigree. I think it's a blend of pedigree and experience both.
Yeah. So obviously you've got 400 something employees, but you started by yourself. When did you know you needed help? What position was that? Was it someone to help you just do your day to day, or was it someone to help you grow the business? How do you even know you're ready for that?
Well, I started myself on paper, but the amount of advisors and people in the support system was pretty vast. The former majority owner of K4 Solutions was my biggest advocate, who I learned a lot from. And so that was great having that support system. I went out before I started Riva and I met with 30 graduated 8A owners. And through that, I probably picked up 2 or 3 more mentors. I've always kind of had mentors, even in my 20s.
That's huge.
And I think they serve different purposes. Some are mentors around, running a business. Some are in specific to GovCon. I think those were other areas. And then it was a little bit of moxie and creativity. Like, how can I kind of get freelancers or people, kind of with the thought that, hey, maybe if you guys grow, I could work there one day. So kind of really leverage my, community of support where I was able to parlay that and kind of in almost like a bartering and favor trading that I was able to get people to help me early on.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned mentors. And that's huge, right? I'm a big proponent of that. I have a number of them in my own life. And it turns out I don't just have one mentor for everything. I've always been told, but if they have what you want, do what they do, right? If they have the body style that I want, if they have the athleticism that I want, or if they're, do what they do their diet, do their workout, try that. So I've got a mentor there. I've got a mentor at work, other people, I'm a broker. I'm a commercial real estate broker with Transwestern. And Transwestern is fantastic. It's not hard to find a nice mentor around there that will take some time to sit down and talk to you and just share with you their experience and give you some pointers of things that you can focus on.
Absolutely. I had one, Ravi Dunkanikote. He runs $1 billion portfolio at CACI, senior VP, and he got me one of my first jobs at CACI. Really a family related friend, but he's been instrumental for the last 15 plus years in just having a regular checkpoint. How are you doing? Where is your career? I've had formal executive coaches too. Not really a big fan of like the lists that they kind of go through. It's very generic. But one of the biggest takeaways between mentorship, executive coaching was the intertwining your work and personal life in how you go about gaining advice, because I think we have a tendency to only ask about the work aspect.
Yeah.
But it is the balance of your life that you have to figure out how to intertwine to meet some of your professional goals. And I think that was one of the things that really helped me out a lot, is seeking advice from people who have had the battle scars or have recommendations. And I think that, I kind of call it work therapy. That's really where it was like, oh, I'm able to break through something that's kind of stuck in my head. I have a sounding board, and this person can give me a different perspective.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of working through fear to do that, right? Because a lot of times we don't want to be vulnerable in front of another person. We want to make sure that they think that we're good at what we're doing or that we're smart. Like to go there and say, look, I'm having trouble, I need some help. Did that take some coaching or a skill building? Were you always like that, or did you have to learn to be that way?
Yeah, I've always been I'm a student and a learner all the time.
Yeah.
Whether you're looking at the degrees or looking at, doing online research, signing up for webinars, reading, talking to mentors, I feel like I'm in a constant state of I got to keep learning and increasing my knowledge base. I really do feel that talking to people has probably been the best. I kind of joke sometimes in mentorship programs where I'm the mentor and I say, hey, I've got a triple degree, MBA, PMP, Lean Six Sigma, high level clearance. I run through all those and I go, I don't think any of those apply to what I do in my daily life.
Yeah.
A lot of it is really, what you've learned through the experience with people. And I think that if you don't have that learning mentality, it could be very prohibitive to be successful, because even if you apply it to GovCon, our market has changed so much in the last 10 years, 20 years, and keeping on top of the trends. I always tell people I'm the student of the market, of the industry. And I think that's really helped us kind of stay at the head of where things are progressing.
So you'd say be the student, not the expert.
I'm definitely not an expert.
Yeah.
I'm definitely the one that's always going to ask a lot of questions. And I love meeting people who are in the mid-level of their career because they hit the glass ceiling. And I say, listen, ask all the questions, and right. No one's going to chastise you for that, because that's the point that you're about to break through and become a manager or a leader.
Yeah. I've done a lot of work with fear, right? Because I was just paralyzed by fear in so many different ways that I didn't even realize. we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes I would act out of fear and think that it was good, good decisions, right? Like being smart. And it's usually selfish fear, right? Fear of losing something I have or not getting something I want, driving me to either do or not do something. And I've learned that a lot of that exists only within my own mind, right?
Yeah.
That most people aren't thinking about me as much as I'm thinking about me. And they're probably not thinking, this guy's a moron, I hate him.
Yeah.
They're probably not thinking that, right? And unless I give them an opportunity, I love helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that people, when I ask them for their help, they're joyful to give it to me.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not asking them for money or give me business. It's help me understand what it is, what you've done that I can apply in my own life.
Well, I mean, we have a concept, Riva Karma, right? And it's tied to our CSR around community service and protecting the environment. And we encourage people, and we even measure people in their success around how can they help others, be a team player. The best example for me was meeting Daryl Peak. He was a protege of mine through the ACT program, and he's worked at high level in Homeland Security. He's been in and out of industry, and he came as my protege to the first meeting, and he had a binder that was 6 inches thick on his plan of our mentor protege program, and it had a 5-year career plan that he put in place. And most recently, he showed it to me, and it's been 5+ years later, and that's kind of the opposite of living in fear, where you say, I'm going to flip the script here and I'm going to be proactive and think about how I'm going to move forward. And I think you do have to have that mentality, to plan, because if you don't take it proactively, you're definitely not going to get the results you're looking for.
Right. How can you hit a target you can't see?
Right. I think I've got that Wayne Gretzky poster in here somewhere.
Yeah.
You only can score it if you shoot on the goal, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, then there's so many people, and it's so great to hear you say that as a normal person. In just people can walk up to you and meet you, right? Because we always hear, right, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. The famous authors, and they have their quotes and things like that. But for some reason, it resonates way more, at least with me, and I hope with the people listening, to hear just normal people talking about that same exact thing, right? Have a plan. And I keep coming back to working out. I don't know why, but it just seems to play a part in my everyday life as far as my psychology, not just my physiology. But I started counting macros, and it kind of changed everything, because then I had something to work towards. I had a plan that I was following. I was aiming for something. I had a target I was trying to hit. It wasn't just like, I'm going to eat less and look better, or be more healthy, or I'm going to get more sleep because I eat more vegetables, or whatever the words are. And I just found that to be huge. You also mentioned earlier, I wanted to come back to that. You met with 30 people when you were trying to just figure out what you were going to do next. Mm-hmm. Was that something that you came up with? Like, how did you come up with that number, or who did you know who to call? Were you just trying to figure out, like you went through this program, 8A. What is 8A, by the way?
It's a Small Business Administration. Government has a set aside programs for, and in this case, a minority and economically disadvantaged individual. So there's set-asides provided for them for contracts, and 8A is the most prolific one out of all of them. There are some constraints in order to be able to apply both economically and socially. For example, I don't have a grandparent nearby that is in a country club, right? That's like one of the factors of what goes into the support system that, with your parents immigrating to this country, or if you immigrated, you didn't have. But starting out, it was me just kind of applying, how do I create a business plan if I don't understand this industry? One of the things that became very obvious is the government really sets it up for small businesses to be successful through set-aside programs. But at the same time, a lot of people go through that maturation. The set-aside program runs out because an 8A specifically is 9.5 years. And a lot of people go off the proverbial 8A cliff because they use the 8A for that entire period. And I became really fascinated with that. It wasn't about starting a company. It was about how do you exit and where are you going downstream? And I saw that path, that this would be a natural progression if I went down that path. So I specifically identified 8A graduate owners. And so just people who've already gone through the full life cycle and said, what would you do differently? Do you have any advice for me? And about, I think 29 out of the 30 were like, oh man, let me tell you where I failed. Let me tell you how to do it differently. And so it was just great hearing all their battle scars and advice and, excitement to see somebody at the front end of that process and just take a lot of notes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So again, you had a target in mind. You had a plan that you don't want to just do the 8A and then 9.5 years later, you're no longer a business owner. What's the plan? The plan is to use 8A as a catalyst or a springboard and actually have a successful business and be able to do commercial work, be able to do more government work on your own. And you sought out that advice from the beginning.
That's a good point. I have a lot of people who ask me this question, and I say, I don't think short term. I think big picture all the time. And I think that, through necessity, we're thinking about surviving as a young company in the short term. But the big picture is it's your reputation, it's the quality of your work. It's not, getting into disagreements that are stonewalled and teaming arrangements or, working on a contract. I've always taken the high road and thought big picture. And, like a lot of times I see companies name their company, something medical. Or, I chose Riva because it's nondescript.
Right.
The name, the company defines the name versus vice versa is because I don't know. You don't know where you're going to have success. You may start in a discipline like cybersecurity because you were a billable cybersecurity consultant, but you may start a company and go, oh, actually, I want to do something completely different in a different area like, health IT. And so that evolution of learning and your business plan, I mean, we've seen it with everyone from Apple to all the stories historically, where a company starts and where they end up is never usually the same place.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned, so you learned from the failures of these 30 folks. What, looking back now, so you're 10 years in, looking back, let's talk about, just pick one that sticks out to you, like a failure that you learned from, because that's a big part of this podcast. What are those impactful moments? And sometimes, it's nice to celebrate the wins, but we got to celebrate those failures too, because that's how we grow.
Absolutely. Well, first off, they weren't they weren't failures. They gave me their advice on where the pitfalls are. So they were very highly successful businessmen and women. But
so they were lessons.
Yeah,
they were. The people themselves weren't failures, but they made.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's be clear. If they're listening, because hopefully they're going to see that you're on here and listen. Right. I'm not calling you a failure. I meant that you made mistakes and he was able to learn from those.
I mean, I love psychology and sociology. Right. My passion is organizational behavior, and I think one of the very fascinating ones that I saw and heard was a lot of owners are emotional leaders. And they develop a lot of hubris as they grow in size. Being humble and modest and continuously learning and knowing where you are in the marketplace, that gut check, that's something that I really took away, which is, you're not at the top of the mountain. You're making your way and you've got to continue. It's just going to get harder as you climb. And so you can't drink your own Kool-Aid. You have to continuously build a team, hire more expertise, gain advisors, and really think through that because, sleeping at the wheel is exactly, once you get the moderate success, that's exactly why some of these companies found themselves, kind of going down in terms of quality because scaling their innovation, it just wasn't possible if you're not continuing to be really on par with your craft and really be thinking about how to hone it to get it better.
So let's talk about that for a second. So when you hire you hire people in your firm, what kind of culture have you set up within your company? Talk to me about how is it open door policy? Like how do you set these teams up? How do they operate with each other? What's that flow and that vibe? It's
a good question because I think it's subjective to where you are in your corporate maturity. I kind of everybody has a different way of breaking it up. I break it up 0 to 2 million in revenue, 2 to 5, 5 to 15, and then 15 to 50 and 50 and higher. And I think you almost have to create a different business plan for those different sizes. When you're 0 to 2, you're just like, man, I just hope I survive. You're literally, hoping that you're not a 90% plus casualty of being a startup. 2 to 5, you're starting to get that success feeling, but you have no infrastructure behind you. And so you start to think through that path of, I've got to think about priming contracts, building an infrastructure, reinvesting. 5 to 15, I think, is one of the hardest areas, actually, because that's where you start to build that infrastructure. And, to kind of tying it back to your question is, you have to project leadership, but you also have to always demonstrate that you're learning with the people that you hire, and they're a key cog in that process to learn. So you want to be a strong leader, but you want to also have that open door policy. Finding that right balance is very difficult for people, I think, in general, because I think our tendency as humans is to want to project leadership and be the smartest person in the room, because we're insecure in that nature that, hey, I have a CEO title, I've got to project it. But I think really being down to earth and being, I always say, paint the problem that you have and bring it to the people you're working with, and they're part of solving the problem. You may be the decision maker, you may have more facts, but I always kind of use that as a path, so that way it takes a little bit more time, it takes a little bit more patience, but then the stakeholders you have that work for you are going, well, I kind of get where he's coming from. I understand what he's trying to do, and I understand how I can try to see if I could help him. I also know that he may not take my advice, but he might take, portions of my advice in order to make a decision. So that's always been my philosophy. It's definitely I don't think it's a popular one, because it does take a lot of patience, because what you can make in a quick decision, you probably have to take an extra 5 steps to really get the collaboration and buy-in and ideation from the stakeholders in the process. But that's all, classically management consulting 101, where you kind of go through that, decision process, working with people to get their buy-in, to get their investment, and to really make a better decision.
I'm just kind of taking in what you just said. And I've seen you operate around the employees of this company, right? I've been fortunate enough to attend some events with you and things like that. And it just seems like everyone has just this very great, friendly relationship with everyone, including you. But you can tell that they still respect you as a leader, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think sometimes when I heard, when you were talking, it's a very fine line, because you want to get along with everyone, especially when it's a small business environment, when you're smaller in nature. But then over time, as you grow, you need more time and separation from them, but you've been able to maintain that relationship with them. And it seems like what I've been able to notice is that everyone within the firm seems to have a great relationship with each other. And they seem to have a great respect for what each other does and brings to the table, and their portion of the pie that they're problem solving.
Yeah.
How do you cultivate that? How do you maintain that?
I learned that probably when I worked at Aquilent. Billable on a contract, I was deputy project manager. We had at the time 24 people billing, Francis Perkin building, and it wasn't just about getting the job done. It was about playing pranks on people in the office. It was fantasy football. It was the happy hours that we scheduled. It was meeting each other's significant others or their furry friends, that they have. And I've always been a firm believer. I learned it there that when you break bread, you're able to build chemistry. You're working with people so often. It's more important to me that you get along, because once you develop that chemistry, you could solve problems better. You're effective working with people. You're able to conquer roadblocks. It isn't a matter of will you come across a roadblock or an obstacle. Life is a track, and the track, you're not just running around it. Imagine it with the obstacles before you run it. And then you suddenly think, man, this is easier to do because I already knew the obstacles would be there. And so if you're able to sit there and have a collegial feel, and, we're doing group lunches together, here at corporate, we have a Mario Kart lounge, we have hoverboards, got a wine fridge, we have an alpaca as our mascot that we all get behind. And, when you have that, it's not so serious. Sometimes it's like, hey, we're going to have our opinions, but let's work through that conflict resolution together and find a way to work. And I love that part of it. That's the culture, right?
Yeah.
And our culture is bred that we all get along, and it's very difficult to say there's no toxicity in any environment. But the more and more you could build strong relationships, it really helps you prevent that toxicity that occurs a lot of times.
Yeah, that's so one question that I've been asking everyone is how would you qualify the difference between belonging and fitting in as it relates to yourself and your professional community, but also your business and your culture? And I think you just kind of summed up that, but just, I don't know, think about that for a second, belonging versus fitting in.
Yeah, when you say that, the biggest thing is I think people think I'm an extrovert. And I think, going through DISC and Myers-Briggs and things like that, I always tell people, I think I was an extrovert in my 20s. I think I've become more of an introvert as I've gotten older. I'm probably somewhere in the matrix, in the middle, on the spectrum. But I really think that you have to really understand the profile of individuals. Being a manager, for example, the tendency is you're either the hard-nosed manager or you're their best friend. But it's the balance of the two and understanding your individual that works for you and their profile and their strengths and weaknesses. I think that that's the biggest part, is the adaptability and not just saying, one size fits all. So if you want to fit in your environment versus belong, fitting, is where you're trying to hard code something. I think belonging is where you're accepting of who you are and you're comfortable in your own skin. And I think that's what we try to do at Riva, is we say, hey, all walks of life, it's great to embrace, all the different people with the different diverse backgrounds. And I think I spend a lot of time trying to learn it too, because I think it actually contributes to ideas to help us evolve as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Let's talk about you as an individual now. Give me an idea. I know you've got a couple kids. How old are they?
11 and 9. I've got a girl and a boy.
Yeah. Have they been holding up over the summer?
I mean, COVID was difficult for my daughter, being in, now she's in 6th grade, not seeing her friends, but my son is more, video games, doesn't care.
Yeah.
He didn't mind it that much. It was very tough. Some of the extracurricular activities like soccer and things like that, they weren't able to do. But kids are resilient. I mean, managing a company of 430 plus people and then watching the kids adapt a lot faster, honestly.
Yeah.
Because they're like, hey, I'm just going to roll with the punches and, figure it out. And, maybe one day they'll remember it or they won't. But,
yeah,
they adapted pretty quickly.
So, I mean, you balance between, a family life and a work life. What's that? How do you keep everything separated? Do you have a morning routine that you follow to set yourself up psychologically, physically? Like, how do you, because that's a lot, right? You've got you've got kids, right? And then you've also got a 400 plus person company.
Yeah, the balance between family and your friends and your career and, the personal aspirations is I think a challenge we all face at different phases of our life. I do think of it consciously with a plan, to have the prioritization. I'm a really big stickler on time management. I think a lot of people classify that like, let's do a 30-minute meeting versus 60. I do it with things like I Ubered for a year and a half because I figured out that
you can work in the car.
I could work in the car and gain, efficiency there that I wasn't losing in traffic.
Oh.
So I pretty much have automated almost every aspect of my life through Amazon and all the online services, even before COVID. And the amount of hours I saved doing that is what I was able to parlay into my family and also my career. So I kind of gamify some of that to try to find ways to eke out more hours. The other part about the routine, I think for me, it was not waking up and starting work right away. Looking at your phone, surfing on social media, it was like getting up and, brushing your teeth, taking a few moments. Some people call it meditation. Some people say, hey, it's a couple minutes of silence just to clear your head. That routine is, I think really helps you optimize on getting ready for the day instead of kind of frenetically jumping into the day. And then you're always like, what meetings do I have today? Did I even prepare for them?
Yeah.
I got to pick up the kids from soccer. That's where you're in a state of chaos and your mind isn't really good at decision making and analyzing because you're always chasing. So, I even equate it to, looking at having a clean car now that I own one that, if it's scattered, like I think your mind becomes a bit scattered. That's me personally. I know everybody's different. I've seen some people's cars are like chaos and it works for them. But, those simple things like that, I think is what I look at. It's something as simple as when I put gas in my car, I take the trash out of my car. So then my car is always clean. So it's looking at those simple things and adding them up in my life. And the idea is just to honestly is to simplify.
God, this question, this conversation is just, it's describing. So I did a trailer for this podcast, and all of the things that you're mentioning are just right in there. And it's not that I sent it to you in advance. I just want to make sure that anyone listening, but it's those small cumulative moments, right? Those moments of impact that add up over time, that shape who we are. And sometimes it's learning from the things that didn't go well. Success is not a straight line. It's a winding road, that sort of thing. And even something as small as the goal is to have a clean car. Well, how do I do that? It's a little bit at a time, and you just make that your habit, and then that accumulates into always having a clean car. Now, you can replicate that in anything you want to do.
Going back to working out, right? It's a regimen, it's a discipline, it's the repetition. We even do it in our sales pipelines, right? If you do a pipeline meeting every 6 months, guess what? It's all stacked and you're behind. But if you do it weekly and you have a discipline and a regimen for it, you probably have a very strong sales pipeline.
Yeah.
And I think not all of us are trained. We all have left brain, right brain, and we have different things that we see. But to me, the repetition drives strength, just like in working out. The repetition allows you to do more reps or to do higher weights. And if you don't have that discipline built in, it's a lot of it is self-discipline. Mm-hmm. That's the part where you have to find the inner strength, especially when you're a young company. But then you can't achieve the results you're looking for.
Yeah, and it's probably more important to get started than it is to be really great at it, because you're probably not going to be really great at it, whatever that it is. Right. Whether it's working out or cold calling or trying to bring in more business or even giving presentations or podcasting, whatever it happens to be, right? Who knows what that first episode is going to sound like compared to the second, and who knows what those two will sound like compared to the 10th or the 15th.
And the biggest part is the fear of trying, and then the other one is giving up early. But life is in a lot of aspects is the grind, and it's the achievement of a lot of repetition, a lot of learning mistakes, where you get, you talked earlier about successes celebrated, failures are not. We were recently nominated for a CCAF award. We didn't win, but I had to prepare a acceptance speech, and in the speech, I had actually said, for all the CEOs in the room, of course it was a Zoom call, I want to congratulate you and your teams on all the second place losses that you had, because they'll never get credit for them. You worked equally as hard, but that's the learning that went into why you actually got the first place awards eventually. And so that's something that we brush over really quick. And I think that we do these things called alpaca cleanses, where it's kind of a hot wash or a debrief whenever we lose anything here, because we're like, how do we get better next time?
Yeah. Okay. So you're actively looking at those losses and what can we learn from, what did they say? What feedback and so do you ask for that feedback? Like, hey, we didn't win, but could you take some time to talk to me?
We take the debriefs, we break it down, we have collaboration. These guys here are phenomenal. They built a Trello board and they're using, Kanban principles to break it down by category and document it in advance. And then we look at the reoccurring themes. And then if you get 3 losses, then you could say, oh, this has happened now 3 times. We might want to think of continuous improvement, to kind of fix this. So that evolution is really exciting to watch. Otherwise, it's really the lesson learned that otherwise you're going to just make the same mistake 12 times and you're wondering, why do we keep making the same mistake?
You take ownership of it. You take inventory of the
Right.
things that went well and the things that didn't go well. And eventually it sounds like you see patterns.
Right.
And then you have, all right, well, so this is something that as a group we need to focus on.
And I'm fascinated with that right now. Data science is such a hot area, and we've got Tableau dashboards up the wazoo here for so many different things. And data-driven decision making, looking at the analytics, seeing what's winning, losing, working, even things like invoicing and error resolution, and looking at different aspects of your organization. It's such a great area. If you versus just going around to each person's office and chatting with them to kind of see what's working, what's not working. And I think that's a phenomenal area right now for companies to invest in.
Yeah, that's awesome. So going back to your morning routine, I'm a big morning routine guy, and it's been, I wanted to finish our thought there because we were on a roll, but what do you wake up at the same time every day? Are you that structured? Because I have a tendency to do that. I set aside time. I do have a prayer and meditation routine, and I generally work out, or I got big into yoga last year, and that's a thing too. But I either do some journaling or some reading or both, or listen to, some sort of speaker or whatever. Talk to me a little bit more about what that looks like and
Sure.
how you prepare yourself.
I'm very fortunate that I don't have any sleep issues. So I know a lot of people, insomnia and have trouble sleeping. Probably takes me about 2 minutes before I pass out. So I realized over time that I'm very fortunate. So one thing that's interesting is I don't set an alarm. I view it that you should let your body kind of wake up naturally. So I actually wake up at a different time every day. And through alarms, we tend to wake up at the same exact time. I'm a very big traveler too, right?
Yeah,
So I go to different time zones. So I've kind of trained myself to let my body naturally wake up when my body says it's time to wake up. And that's been, a result of traveling, but also I think it's really helped me get that, whether it's 6 or 8 hours to be a better functioning adult, in my daily life. I think the other part of it for me is music. I think I kind of got away from music over the years, and then I reconnected with it about 5 years ago, and I started to go down, listening to the old music I used to listen to when I was younger.
What are you into?
I used to listen to a lot of rock and, it's 90s hip hop, all of 80s, 90s hip hop. But then I started to kind of like learn about some of these new genres like bluegrass and looking at some of the country. And I really like down tempo and, Budo Lounge kind of music and, seeing who are the new artists like Alan Walker, he fascinates me. And so I started to kind of do it, but I did it mood based. A Monday versus a Saturday versus a Thursday, it might be classical. Maybe it's Vivaldi, but it was kind of mood based where I listened to it and it kind of got my day started, where you're brushing your teeth and you're sitting there going, I just got lost in my mind thinking about my day, listening to this music and transcending from, just a basic repetitive pattern. And I think that really helped out a lot. And then I think the recent one is finding things around nutrition and health. It sounds like you would probably be able to teach me a thing or two,
Wow.
but learning, having a good breakfast and not just saying, let me grab that coffee and run out the door. Let me actually think about how to get my body functioning to be optimal. So I've started to get better in that. I'm definitely not the best in any way, shape, or form, but at least it's a conscious idea around how do I get my mind right, my body right, because how am I going to make good decisions and be patient and understanding and have empathy and listen and lead if I can't have my entire, functioning self in a good place, state of mind.
Yeah, mind, body, spirit.
Right.
I went to a Tony Robbins event, 2017. You know Tony Robbins?
Yep.
And big thing, motion creates emotion, right? Emotion is energy in motion. It was a big thing that he would talk about, and just, we move our body. I'm around a lot of people that, you want to change your mind, move a muscle. Go do something. You want to feel different, act different.
Mm-hmm.
Mood follows action, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I found that, working out, and there's probably all kinds of science that I'm, not prepared to quote or anything like that about what it does psychologically when you work out with dopamine and things like that. But I just found that, it all just seems to function well. And I found that it doesn't have to be as extreme. Not that CrossFit is extreme. It's just a full body workout, but it doesn't have to be a crazy workout to where you feel like you're going to die after. You could simply just do some stretching and get the blood circulating, and it would do just fine.
Yeah, and I have both the Mirror and I just ordered the Peloton, so I've definitely prescribed to the new age of home and health and different things you can do. But I agree. I mean, even a lot of people watch their steps. My dad's retired, and I got him a Fitbit, and he's counting his steps and does 2 walks a day, and it's really good for your mind. Just to break through, what may seem like a mundane task. That's very good for your mind.
The approach I took to things like that was because I had to, right? I thought, either I'm not enough of this or I'm too much of that, or I should weigh less, or I should look like this instead of that. And it was, I'm going to do this for that specific purpose, right? A lot of people diet that way. They diet to lose weight, or, they work out so that they can look better. And then something happened in there, kind of like what you were just talking about, where now I'm doing it because it's a good thing to do for my body. I want my legs and my arms to be able to move 30 years from now pretty freely, so I continue to stretch out, not because something's wrong with me or I'm lacking something and that's why I have to do it, right? I work out because I want to continue to be able to use the body that I have. It's the only one I have to live in, so I might as well use it pretty well, or as best as I can. And it doesn't have to, I'm not going to be an Olympic athlete, but I want my legs and my arms to work. I want to be able to bend over. I want to be able to tie my shoes without holding my breath, because there was a time when I had to do that.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's a tough draw too, right? Genetics is, you never know what's going to happen. But once again, going back full circle to being proactive and saying, I've got to figure out how I can what's in my span of control. I'm really big on that. I think we have a lot of anxiety over things we can't control. I just say, I know what I can control, and that's where I've got to find my inner peace.
Stay in the moment.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have a prayer meditation routine or any breathing? You mentioned that earlier. What's that kind of look like? Where'd you get it from?
There's like some cool apps out there, like Headspace. We actually use that at Riva. Someone here, she leads like a wellness and meditation on Wednesdays, and and then that app is kind of recommended, but
for employees only.
People and employees are using it right now. But I really took not a prescribed path. It was more of me clearing my head with silence and letting it empty out, giving myself enough time to let your mind wander. That's really what I kind of do in my daily routine. It's definitely, I think it's helped me because I feel like you unlock problems when your mind isn't so cluttered and busy, and you suddenly solve things that were jamming you up because you let your mind wander. We have a tendency, I think, to want to solve a problem immediately. That old adage, sleep on a problem. I love that. I don't like making quick decisions. It's really being patient and letting it find you. Sometimes it's, that 15 minutes on a elliptical or a Peloton might actually be the thing that unlocked you to find the answer of something in your work life.
I'm around a lot of people. We talk about that. Clinching gives you rope burn.
Yep.
So, you hold on tight to the problem. I got to solve this. I have to do it right now, and it's going to come from within me. It was like, well, have some deep breaths. Take your attention away from it and then come back, and maybe you see it in a different way. Maybe,
Yeah. And I think people, I love the concept of ideation. I love people who are creative. I think we herald people who are process and with engineering brains who that's really, revered in our industry. But the creative part, when you just get on a whiteboard and you get people throwing out suggestions and ideas with no specific format, I like encouraging that. And people think it's weird sometimes, and they're like, why don't we just fill out the form, Naveen, and we have what it done. And I'm like, but I'd like to sit there and get everybody's opinion out here, and pick up themes here, and think about different options. And I think that ideation part and the creativity part really gets you to a different decision probably more than half the time.
Are you a technical person? Do you have a technical background, and then you've made that shift from being technical to now in leadership? How does that play into being a leader of technical people when you can no longer look at things from a technical aspect 100%, or you yourself may not have even come from a technical background?
I put a higher intrinsic value, though, on being able to understand emotional IQ, situational awareness. It's your ability to really understand the situation and be a chameleon and adapt. I think I grew up like, hey, you're going to be a math guy and you're going to be a technical guy. And I think that I really took a charge in college, and I said, I think I'm going to try to teach myself to be the other person I want to be. So I find myself to be a bit of a blend between the two, because I've self-taught myself to learn to tap into that creative brain and think through the problems without process and structure. But I could definitely tell that's my initial inclination is, hey, what time am I meeting Phil today? And I got to think about, I do this in interviews with scenarios, like at what point did you decide you were going to look up how much time it took you to get to the point of your interview? And people look at me like I'm crazy. But what I'm really doing is I'm trying to pick up what kind of brain they are, because you immediately someone is going to come along and go, oh, I actually drove out here yesterday, Naveen, and I wanted to scope it out. Yeah. And so you can see that rigid and process part versus people are like, I just looked it up half hour before I got here. Yeah. And stuff.
Well, what's that? So what's that tell you? The person that drove out here yesterday versus the person that, kind of had an idea, looked it up just to make sure that they were right, and swung by.
I think it depends on the job function. I had a joke yesterday in the office. We were going through performance reviews, and I said, it was a big call, and I said, I want to state on the record here, the only people who haven't finished their self-appraisals are the same people who never finish their timesheets on time. Oh, by the way, those are our salespeople. But I don't want to stifle that. No, let them go. Let them be who they are. Let them go out there and build the relationships. Marketing is another division like that. Proposal writing is another one. You want to encourage that creativity while you still have that process. I love when there's a balance between the two, but it is our tendency to say, I need process, I need an SOP, I need some rigid ways of doing things. I really love what this fellow named Cameron Hogan told me from E3 Federal. He said it's your strategy is like drawing a line in the sand, and it's wiped out every day by the tide. So be ready to draw that line again the next day. And I think that was really impactful for me, because it really said, even if you try to get everything perfect, it's never going to be perfect. So be ready to start again tomorrow and still meet your goals, but you're going to adapt every day, that you're going to get something else thrown at you. And you could see it, and especially in leaders, they're like, oh my God, I got this problem. This thing happened. This person didn't do this. And there's so much panic, anxiety, and concern. And I'm kind of like, well, let's figure it out. Let's just, we knew these are the things of our daily routine we're going to come across. And it's not all unicorns and rainbows,
Right.
This is life, and we just got to figure it out and solve it. And those that are able to effectively solve those problems, I feel, are the ones that are the most successful.
Yeah, they roll with the punches, or they have that next play mentality.
Right.
One thing I wanted to ask you, just as an individual, right? There's this idea of being at a jumping off point where you can no longer keep doing what you're doing. You're unsure about what to do next, but you're at a jumping off point where you just can't keep doing what you're doing and expecting things to be different, but you're just unsure of what to do next.
So as I would apply it to my career, Riva specifically, one of the things I had to teach myself is this rule of 80-20 of I'm not going to get everything right. And I accept that. And that's a tough pill for people to swallow, that they look at it as I haven't achieved perfection, I have poor quality, but I kind of view it that it's acceptable. I think that's one that I did. The second one is, can I do this job? I think that we have to have that gut check moment. I love this phrase, under 20 million in revenue, you're an entrepreneur. Over 20 million, you're a CEO. I think that's a very, very good depiction, because an entrepreneur, you could start a lot of companies, but when you've got to build an infrastructure, set a business plan, you've got to work through the financials, and that all of the aspects, the people problems of organizational behavior. That's where suddenly these 92 Harvard Business Reviews I read in the Metro while half asleep during my MBA, I'm remembering some of them, and I'm going, oh man, I've got to apply this now to running this company. And I think that's to me, you have to have that gut check. Can you do that? And even if you can, after 20, for us, right, we're over 20 million. I still talk to my executives and go, we need to bring in another CEO or a president here, who's done this before. And I think that self-reflection, and it goes back to me being learning. I'm trying to learn how to do it. I haven't done this before, but, I'm also trying to measure my results and say, can I do that next step? So I think I have that gut check all the time. I don't have a lot of fear. I think people qualify me as a risk taker. I always say I hedge my risks really well. And I think that you have to know what you can and can't do within your own self, and do that calculated risk assessment in a lot of your decisions. And I think that's what I do. And I have a tendency through entrepreneurship, now being a CEO, to say I have to take some chances. That's part of being a business owner, but I can't put myself in that red field of risk. And I think that's part that, you definitely have to take a look at.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Just kind of, knowing your own limitations and not viewing that as a negative, right? And understanding that, hey, I've never been here before. Maybe I could use the counsel of someone who has, or maybe that person who has is probably better suited to do that, so that I can focus on the things that I do well. I think that goes back to even teamwork, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be the quarterback.
And,
right?
and I think that, if you look back at 2 years ago and you keep doing that, you learn fast in owning a business. So it's not 2 years, it's quarterly, where you're continuing to evolve, and you go, oh, okay, I definitely would have done things differently if I knew what I knew now. I look future forward, and try to keep my feet in the present. I think everything is a path. When I give speeches, to proteges, I always tell them about the jobs that, going down a wrong career path, quote unquote wrong, getting fired from jobs, working in public versus private. And I said, the sum of the whole is what makes me who I am. And it's given me the lessons to have this job today. So, I don't think there's any wrong path out there for us.
Yeah, well, look, Naveen, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit and chat with me. And so I just wanted to say that while we're still here, and just congratulations on all your success, and congratulations on all the things that didn't go well that you're learning from.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I really enjoyed chatting with you today. It's for me, it's sometimes, I hear things that I don't even know I was thinking.
Thanks for listening to DC Local Leaders. We'd love to connect with you. Find us on LinkedIn and YouTube by searching DC Local Leaders, on Instagram at DC Local Leaders, or our website, dclocalleaders.com. You can find the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google, or wherever you find great podcasts. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. If you're a business leader and have questions on your lease and how it impacts your business's opportunities to grow, or have questions about the market, you can reach Philip directly at philip.nathram@transwestern.com. He'd love to speak with you. Until next time.